Hello everybody, this is Zachary, aka ZypherMTG. Today, we're going to be doing a little homage to MTG Goldfish's Against the Odds. I'm in a couple Facebook groups for Magic the Gathering, and recently I saw several people arguing over whether Torment of Hailfire is even a good card. I contested that in the right deck, namely a ramp deck, it actually probably could be a pretty serviceable finisher. It's definitely not Ulamog, but we're not going to have Ulamog here in a couple of months, and in against the right matchup, it may actually just be better. So, today, we're going to go ahead and find out. If you like big decks that ramp up to huge endgame threats, if you like causing your opponent to take a whole bunch of damage or sacrifice their entire board, this deck might be for you. So let's go ahead and talk about what we're actually ramping ourselves up into, our end game here. Then we're going to go ahead and talk about our ramp spells themselves and how they play with each other. And then we're going to talk about what we're doing to protect ourselves while we do it. Torment of Hailfire is the card that we are really testing out in this deck. We're going to see if it's any good. It's X black black for a sorcery. Basically, you get to make your opponent choose X amount of times whether they want to take 3 damage, whether they want to sacrifice a non-land permanent, or whether they want to go ahead and discard a card out of their hand. No matter what they choose, it's actually pretty okay for us, especially if we can get X equaling 6 or more. The first few times, they're going to go ahead and just take the life. We're really not threatening their life early. We are looking to end it with a big Torment of Hailfire, or World Breakers, or a combination there. So if you can get X equaling 6, 7, they're going to start having to discard out of their hand, or they're going to have to start sacrificing some permanents. World Breaker is our second thing that we're really ramping up to. It's a 5/7 for 7, big colorless Eldrazi. Basically, it is on cast, you get to go ahead and exile an artifact, enchantment, or land that your opponent controls. And if they counter it, you still get the trigger. And if they kill it, that's even better, because we're just going to bring it back from the graveyard for 2 and a colorless and sacrificing a land. So it's a recursive threat that does a good job of slowing your opponent down. Let's go ahead and talk about our ramp spells. Our first one here isn't exactly a ramp spell, however, we are running 3 colors, and Attune with Ether really helps smooth out our land for our pretty stiff mana requirements on some of our spells. Some decks that are even just green-red ramp are running Traverse the Ulvenwald. I prefer the Attune with Ether in this deck just because we are using a little bit of an energy package, which I'll touch on here in just a minute. Our second spell here that fits our ramp definition is Servant of the Conduit. It is 1 and a green for a 2/2. It comes in, it brings in 2 energy, and you can tap it and use an energy to create 1 mana of any color. So not only does it help us smooth out, again, our pretty rigorous mana requirements, especially post-board games, however, it also will ramp us from 2 to 4 if we need it. 3 mana is really where our actual ramping starts up, though. We've got, for 2 and a green, we've got Beneath the Sands. It's going to go find any basic land in our deck, bring it into play tapped. In the late game, it does have cycling too, so that is also going to help smooth our draws out. That's going to, really important here, bring us from 3 mana to 5 mana on turn 4 so that we can cast our 5-drop Hour of Promise. What Hour of Promise is going to do here for us is it's going to be a 4 and a green sorcery. It's going to go grab any 2 lands out of our deck. Doesn't matter if they're basics, non-basics, whatever, doesn't care. It just goes and grabs them. It does care, however, if after it resolves, if you have 3 deserts on the field. If you do, you not only get those 2 lands for 5 mana, which is already a pretty decent deal, but you also get 2 2/2 zombies. So that's going to help us clog up the ground while we ramp up to our Worldbreaker, which we're going to be able to cast after Hour of Promise, or to our Torment of Hailfire. And you probably noticed just a moment ago when we were talking about Servant of the Conduit, it ramps us from 2 to 4. You'll notice our only 4-drop here is Chandra Torch of Defiance. Chandra Torch of Defiance is also another sort of non-stereotypical ramp spell. It doesn't permanently add any lands to the field, anything like that. However, it can take us from 4 there all the way up to 6, and as long as we're not missing our land drop, actually up to 7, so that we can still cast Worldbreaker on curve. In addition, Chandra's just super flexible. She's removal when we need her, card advantage when we don't need the removal or the ramp, and just a really good flex spot here in the deck. There's really only space for 2 of them, but they're very important. Next, let's talk about how we're actually protecting ourselves while we're going off and ramping. So I have a Braid in here. It's a 2-of. It offers really good flexibility. I anticipate that we're going to see some Monument decks here as we're testing. Monument decks have really been resurgent over the last several weeks and are really at an all-time high. So the first ability to just deal 3 damage to a creature for 2 at instant speed, hey, that's probably already good enough, but tack on the ability and flexibility to destroy an artifact, and you have an all-star in a Braid. Harness Lightning is really what we're looking to use the energy that we're generating with Servant of the Conduit and Attune with Ether for. It's going to take down things as low as 1 toughness, all the way up to 7 or 8 toughness if we've been able to cast an Attune with Ether or 2, or have had a couple Servant of the Conduits come in. Next, we have Sweltering Suns. 3 mana, deals 3 damage to each creature on the field, cycles for 2 if you don't need it, really good flexibility. And finally here, we have Hour of Devastation. Hour of Devastation is a red sorcery, 3 red. It's going to come in, each creature loses Indestructible, and then it's going to deal 5 damage to each creature and Planeswalker that's not Nicol Bolas. Doesn't really matter, we don't run Nicol Bolas, but it is going to kill our Chandra if our Chandra is not already at 6 loyalty. And really, that's going to take care of just about anything we need it to. We're far more concerned about early threats than we are about late threats, because we have some late threats of our own. So let's go ahead and talk about our lands. Obviously black is just a splash. We're only running 4 cards on the main board that need any black at all. In order to facilitate that, we have 4 Blooming Marshes. They're going to come down on turn 1. They're going to be a source of green so that we can hit our Attune with Ether, as well as black for later in the game when we need it. We've then got 3 Hash Up Oasis. There are green deserts. They're going to be really important for our Hour of Promise. We've got 1 Ifnir Deadland so that we can fetch black off of Hour of Promise. We have 4 Random Map Ruins, and we have 4 Sheltered Thickets, the green-red cycling land. In addition to that, we have 4 basic forests, 2 basic mountains, and 2 basic swamps. All in all, we're running 24 lands. I've played around with the deck just a tiny little bit. I found that 24 lands, for the most part, is enough. It actually is still totally possible to flood out, but for the most part, we haven't really been punished too much for running 24 lands. Let's go ahead and talk sideboard real quick. I do have 2 Ulamogs in here. 2 might be too few. I may end up cutting a Chandra's Defeat in favor of a 3rd Ulamog. That being said, we've got 2 in. They're going to be really good against control, because even if they get countered, they're still going to come down and count, or rather, they're still going to exile 2 targets. Next, let's talk black. We've got 2 Liliana's Defeats here. They're going to be good against zombies, primarily. They're going to get rid of a Diregraph Colossus. They're going to get rid of their other lords that they've got going on, a Crypt Breaker maybe, if we just really need them to not be drawing a bunch of cards. 1 mana, super efficient. We've got 4 Bantu's Last Reckoning. So 1 black, destroy all creatures. 3 mana, wipes everything. The downside, we don't get to untap our lands the next turn. But hopefully we're able to get 3 or 4 creatures out at once, especially against, like, let's say red-based aggro, something along those lines. Let's go into red. Let's talk Chandra's defeat. So 5 damage against a red creature or red planeswalker. If it's a Chandra, we get to go ahead and discard and loot, essentially. Or rummage, I guess it's actually called in red. And then we've got our 4th Hour of Devastation, and we also have our 3rd and 4th Sweltering Suns, as well as By-Force. By-Force is really just there to help us shore up against some Monument decks. And there you have it. This is Jund Ramp. Hopefully you guys like it. We're going to do a few playtest videos. We're going to see if Torment of Hailfire actually is any good in Standard. It's definitely a card with some powerful effects, especially if we can get X to equal anything more than 6, or if we can chain a few of them together. So go ahead and like the video, guys. Let me know if you want to see me continue producing content like these deck techs here. And let us know how you think we're going to do. We're going to record a few playtest videos. We're going to go through a Standard league and see if it's any good.